All right, so last night, Francis Ngannou was brutally KO'd by Anthony Joshua, and I wanted to come on here and give my reaction and give my take on the situation. I've seen a lot of people out in the community talking about this, so I figured I would make my own video. And guys, the fact of the matter is this. Francis Ngannou did not lose last night. Like, he lost, but he did it. The guy made $20 million for stepping in there to box Anthony Joshua, right? There's always the pitch of, well, it's not his sport, right? Because he's an MMA guy. He goes in there with Anthony Joshua. It's not like he just went in there against some boxer or whoever. He went in there against one of the top heavyweights of our time currently in Anthony Joshua. And Francis Ngannou, yes, he did look a little slow, right? In my opinion, he was outgunned in the matchup, right? There was a significant speed advantage on the side of Anthony Joshua. And one thing I want to point out, and I said this on my live stream last night, when people talk about boxing compared to MMA, I put it to you like this. It's like hockey and lacrosse. They're a very similar sport, but yet very different, right? With hockey, you have a stick, you have designated defenders, midfielders, designated offensive guys, and you have a goalie, but it's a puck. Yes, you have a stick, you're skating on ice. Like, it's similar to, where lacrosse, you have a defense, you have an offense, midfield, and a goalie, and a cage, a goal. It's very, very similar. The problem is it's still very different in terms of the way it operates. And that's exactly what happens with MMA and boxing. Guys, I've been on the record saying this for so long. If you have never sparred with professional boxers, it is very, very different than sparring against MMA guys who are like, I have the best MMA boxing. I have good hands for an MMA guy. It's so different. Boxers stand different. They throw punches very different. Obviously, they don't have to worry about leg kicks. They don't have to worry about takedowns. They don't have to worry about any of those things. So their stances and the way their game operates is very much only worrying about punches, which is they've adapted to a style that is very hard for these guys that are coming over from MMA, coming over from kickboxing to find those openings on, right? A lot of the professional boxers, they're very sideways. They got a good shoulder turn here. They're catching and parrying with this hand. The jab shooting out fast as lightning. They're good behind their hands. They're very turned. And there really is not a lot of openings. These high-level professional boxers, not only do they hit hard, not only do they throw good punches, do they throw good combinations, do they have a lightning-fast jab, they have outstanding defense. Like you saw with Ngannou, early on there, it's like, Ngannou's just kind of moving forward. He's over parrying with that right hand, and Joshua's looking at that like, dude, really? Like, this is what you're going to stand in front and over parry like this with your rear hand and try to parry my jab? Like, Joshua made the read. He just sat down on a right hand. He kept throwing out that jab, and eventually, after he had already started to find the target with that right hand, he sat down on one and threw one of the nastiest right hands I've ever seen. And it's one of those things, guys, where I like the idea of stars from MMA going over to boxing, right? It's the only way to kind of make it fair, because if you take a boxer and bring them into MMA, there's too many other skills and elements, right? Because what we see, all credit to Clarissa Shields, right? She's one that comes to mind who is a highly credentialed boxer. She comes over into MMA. She's fighting people that nobody really knows, right? No offense. It's just that's the truth. And that's kind of what we would get if we saw a high-level boxer come over to MMA. It would have to be against even a lower-ranked person, and MMA would still probably have their way with a top-tier boxer. And it's just because there's so many other factors involved into the matchup. But I don't dislike when MMA guys go over, they take on a challenge, and they go in there against a high-level boxer. The problem is, it's a very, very different sport. The timing is different. The distance management, the glove size, the way you move, the ring instead of a cage. It's a lot easier to cut people off. It's a lot easier to chase someone down and make them fight in a phone booth. It is a totally different ballgame. And if you don't believe me, for example, Alex Pineda, I know it's not boxing, it's kickboxing. What people miss about Pineda, he was not a particularly good leg kicker, ever. Well, what happened? He comes over into the octagon instead of Glory, where in Glory, it's a boxing ring. It's the same thing as a regular boxing ring. And everything takes place in a very small space. It's hard to get away from people. It's hard to, that's why Izzy's had a lot of success over in MMA, because you got to chase them. Whereas in a boxing ring, it's a lot easier to close people down and cut them off. where we've seen Pineda, look how good he is at throwing leg kicks. There's a lot more space to operate with. And what these guys are finding out when they go over into the boxing ring, there's not a lot of space. When you do get tired, when you do get cracked with a good shot, there's nowhere to run. These boxers, they're very methodical and patient. You saw the difference. Ngannou's in there. He's very stiff. And it's not to rip on Ngannou, man. The guy is, what he did against Tyson Fury now has people questioning, is Tyson Fury like a fraud? Is Tyson Fury who he says he is at this point? Because we look at Ngannou, I thought Ngannou won against Fury. And I know a lot of us feel that way. And when we look at that, it just makes now people are questioning Tyson Fury. So if Ngannou never did that, well, who knows here? Because I think eventually we're going to see a matchup between Fury and Anthony Joshua, depending on how it plays out with Usyk and Fury. But overall, this notion that these MMA guys, yes, they have good boxing for MMA, but it's boxing for MMA. It's different. Guys, I've sat up here so many times and said, my opinion, the best boxer in the UFC is Ilia Topuria. And everyone's like, no, it's Max Holloway, it's Dustin Poirier, it's this guy, it's that guy. The reason I say it's Ilia Topuria, the stance. He's very bladed, he's low to the ground, he's got a good high guard, his chin's tucked into his shoulder. Tell me that he does not move and operate like a professional boxer. That matters. He throws combinations. He's got a good shoulder roll. He mixes all of the things together. He has a really good jab. His stance, the head movement, the swang motion, all of those things are what you need to go in there against a good high-level professional boxer. As much as I like guys like Max Holloway, Gaethje, Poirier, these guys that people bring up as some of the top boxers in the sport, they're very square, they're very upright in their stances, and the way they block and the way they use the long guard and things like that, that doesn't work in boxing. It just does not work in boxing. You have to move your head, you have to fight, you have to, adapt to the gloves, and you have to be able to move side to side. You have to have good head movement. You can't be a good professional boxer without having elite head movement, right? I know that there's guys out there that aren't necessarily known for their crazy head movement like Canelo, but their reaction time, the pull out of the way, slip, turn their head even, dip off the center line, throw shots. Like, people just seem to miss some of the fine details. But with all of that said, Francis Ngannou's run in boxing, I don't know if it's over, right? He may go out there against Deontay Wilder. We saw a tragic performance the last time out from Deontay Wilder. I'm sure he wants to get back in there. I think that's an intriguing matchup. Honestly, that's the one I wanted to see the most out of all the potential boxing matchups for Ngannou. I mean, now it's lost a little bit of its steam considering we've seen Ngannou lose 2 matches, which, I mean, the first one I thought he beat Fury, but still. And now he goes out there and gets knocked out by Joshua. And I got to be honest, guys, I thought if anyone was going to knock out Francis, it was going to be Deontay Wilder, because Deontay Wilder hits really, really hard, and he has a missile of a right hand, and he throws it straight, where Ngannou's very looping, and that's the difference. When you see Ngannou in there, he looked good in the Tyson Fury matchup. He was trying to counter Fury every time he would come in with that left hook. We saw against Joshua, Joshua's not playing that game. He had that backhand loyal to the side of his head. He was picking him apart with a jab. There was a significant speed advantage on the side of Anthony Joshua. And I'm happy for Anthony Joshua, man, because first of all, what a sport the guy is, right? Going after Francis Ngannou, or going up to Francis Ngannou after, being very encouraging, knowing that, hey, man, this guy came over into my sport. Yes, I did knock him out, but Anthony Joshua knows in the back of his mind, if I stepped in an octagon, I would get murked by Francis Ngannou. So there is that respect factor, which I appreciate on the side of Anthony Joshua, because make no mistake, if Francis Ngannou fought any of these boxing heavyweights in MMA, it would be a butchering. Francis Ngannou would destroy them. We all know that. But now this begs the question. I tweeted this last night. Does that now make Francis Ngannou's next MMA fight in the PFL against Renan Ferreira? Does that make this interesting? And that kind of sounds weird, but what I mean by that, guys, is if Francis went out there and did really well both times, right? We saw him do well against Fury, but now that he got flatlined by Joshua, now there's that intrigue, wait a minute here. Ngannou's not as invisible as we thought. He got knocked out. I know it was a really high-level professional boxer. And yes, it's boxing, but it's we've seen guys get knocked out. They come back. They're not necessarily the same. So what happens when Ngannou goes in there against this big 6'8" guy who's coming off a starching KO of Ryan Bader, which again, I've said time and time again, no disrespect, Ryan Bader, if you happen to see this. I've been watching your career for a long time, and at one point, yes, you were a good fighter. You had good takedowns. You know, back in your UFC days, I've been following you at Bellator. Ryan Darth Bader, like, I like the nickname too. But Ryan Bader is far past being anywhere close to an elite MMA heavyweight. He could not probably beat a single top 10 UFC heavyweight right now. And he was the Bellator champion at heavyweight. Goes in there against Renan Ferreira. We all knew how that was going. That was my biggest critique about that PFL Bellator card, was that was the main event, because I knew it was going to end that way. And so now we're in a situation where I still think Ngannou knocks out Ferreira. 150, in my opinion, I always think that I think Francis is like the king of the heavyweight division in MMA, right? I mean, we all would have liked to have seen him against Jones or him against Aspinall. Like, those are dream matchups at this point. But I don't think we're ever going to see them. At this point, I do think we see Francis Ngannou possibly box Deontay Wilder next. But in the event, it's apparent that he is going to be his next matchup will be in the PFL against this guy Renan Ferreira, and I still think Ngannou's going to win. I pick him to win, but now it's just maybe a little bit more interesting, because before everyone's like, "Oh, dude, Ngannou levels above," and then Ferreira goes out there and they're like, "Oh, well, he knocked out Bader. Who cares?" And now it's like, well, we saw Ngannou get knocked out, and it's like, is there a shift in the camp of Ngannou? Is he older now? Has he still got it? I don't know, but to sit there and crap on Ngannou, man, for getting knocked out, make fun of him and all those different things, I don't get it, guys. Guy made $20 million, went out there, kind of exposed Tyson Fury. Excited to see what's next. Curious to hear your all thoughts down in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I appreciate you all. See you next time.